So everybody, this is Casey, and Casey's been sober for 5 years. Casey's going to tell us what happened and what it's like now. And I'm going to let you start off, Casey, introducing yourself to our guests.
I'm Casey. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I've worked actually, it's funny. So, kind of where my addiction started when I was younger was with food first. I've struggled with an eating disorder when I was much, much younger. Um, and I never really like squared that away. So, it kind of bled into, so when I was younger, that's what it started with. And then kind of where my addiction really took off was college. Um, so I'd gotten weight loss surgery done, and with that, you absorb drugs and alcohol like 8 times faster than someone who does not have the surgery. I remember I blacked out for the first time, and from that point forward, that was like my aha moment, and I was going to live my life like that for the rest of my life. So for those 5 years, I was pretty much a blackout drinker every time I drank. There were some like stints with drugs also. I was kind of more of I was a trash can. Anything joy, sadness, anxiety, depression. Like I said, I did that for like 5 years, but it was like this cycle of like for 6 months. I'd spend every night blacking out. And then I also, the third piece to what I struggle with is I have a mental health piece to this also. So I'd like lose my mind, and then I would end up in a detox center or stabilization unit where they would, the longest I ever stayed in one place was 21 days meds. And then come to find out when you're on meds, I would like try to stay sober and there'd be some hope that it would be different this time. But then I would drink again, and alcohol and or drugs, the antipsychotics and antidepressants and all the other things. It would just be this cyclical cycle of like seeing a therapist and a psychiatrist. And it got to a point, and I heard this one thing. I was listening to this other podcast actually a few weeks described as there's like the chronic alcoholic and then there's the acute alcoholic. And divorce, losing their children, they can get sober for their kids, they can get sober for their wife, they can get sober so that they can complete school. I was not one of those. I was the chronic. So still use, and the consequences were only getting harder and harder. There were stints of homelessness out of my Jeep, and I'd be out, and here I am living in my Jeep with my dog, and it just like really felt hopeless in those moments to where it was almost like it just didn't feel like it was out. And then I would visit with these therapists, and I was like what they would call a complicated case because I had like the eating disorder and the addiction and the mental health, and they can't treat you because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, okay, so I'd move on to the next therapist, or I'd move on because everyone was afraid to treat me and responsibility for my life either. I thought it was everyone else's fault. I blamed this so long. And then, so like after I graduated, I thought the party was going to end because I thought my drinking was really normal because like when you're in college, blackout drinking is so normalized. And so like when I left college, I was like, oh, I got this great job. I was a case manager facility, and I was doing all these things, and like I still kept drinking the way that I was, and I was working with much. I was still drunk the next day. That's where I think it kind of clicked for me that it was a problem, and then I would try to stop, or I would like try to detox myself over the weekend so that when Monday came up, I'd be sober and ready for work. So yeah, I was drinking like that, I was using like that, and I wanted to stop. So I would like try to detox myself over the weekend. I was like, I just have to make it to Friday, and then I have Saturday and Sunday off, and I'll just detox myself so that by Monday I'll be fine. And here I am still drinking, and it was just like the same thing over and over again, like these like attempts of doing the same thing, hoping for a different result, right? And then I think I was in Wyoming at the time. We moved around quite a bit. My dad was military, so there was that. And I finally like came to Texas to go to treatment. They finally sat me down and were like, "You're not that complicated." And I met these women with like 5, 6, 10, 12 years sober. And walked into treatment, there were women there with like 15 days. And I'm like, how'd you just do that? How
Yeah.
15 days? And I remember them like talking about like a 12-step program, and kind of started doing that. And there was a lot of barriers. I mean, really, when I was drinking and using it, the homelessness, the institutions, it just felt like stacked against me is what it felt like. And I kept having these like moments where like I was like, there's got to be a way out, but I just don't know, and I don't think there really is a way until I actually did it, right? And they kind of just left me where I was at, because I was a nightmare.
So when did you first start drinking and using?
Yeah. Okay. So I don't really remember this, but my mom told me this story. So we lived in Germany. I was born in Germany. And in Germany, you have the beer man like you would the milkman. So you put the crawlers in the thing, the empty ones, and they switch them all out. And my mom told me when I was like 4 or 5, run around finishing the bottom of the crawler or the empty everyone's glass if they didn't keep an eye on me. And then when I got older, like my parents, and I don't think my parents knew any better, and I think they thought they were being helpful in teaching like responsible drinking when they did this. But they would let me like finish the neck of their beer if I went when they finished. And so I remember like at a really young age being excited that my dad was bringing beer home. And I thought that because it was so normal. Like when you grow up military, everyone parties as hard as they work. That's where the drinking like really, that's where it kind of started. And in junior high, I would like steal bottles of liquor from my mom or dad's cabinet that I knew they wouldn't miss, and I would just go hide it at 14, drinking in my bedroom by myself. Like there's nothing normal about that. And so that's kind of like where it really started. And then I just like remember after like 14, 15, when I couldn't do that anymore, I switched to food. So if it wasn't drugs and alcohol, it was food. I was a pretty severe binge eater for a long time growing up. And so, but that's like really where the drinking started, was like younger. And I know like my parents were trying to normalize it and make it so that like maybe we would have a healthy relationship with alcohol. But unfortunately, allergy.
Yeah. No such thing.
No.
No such thing.
I had to be an institution because I was like, do I have to be locked up in order for this to work? If that makes sense.
So what age were you when you went to your first rehab?
I was like a sophomore in college, so like 20.
Okay.
20, from like 20 to 23. Sorry, some of this is kind of blurry for me. I don't remember a lot of that.
I completely understand.
Really in and out of, I didn't really go to rehabs. I went to like detoxes or stabilization units. I didn't go to like rehab until I was 24. Okay.
So the places that you're going, that you're mentioning now, what were they?
They're like detoxes or like stabilization.
Okay.
So I would end up kind of like I'd end up like and my rugby coach in college would come find me and would like basically take me to the next institution. And so, like I said, it was between 5 to 21 days that this would be.
Mm-hmm.
They were just like short stays to dry me
Mm-hmm.
up and get me stabilized so I could start classes again. And
Mm-hmm.
so the last time I was in an institution was an inpatient treatment center, was like a residential treatment center here in Texas.
Okay. Okay. So when did your parents start getting involved in saying, you know what, it's more this is an issue now? At what stage did it take them to recognize
So
it?
actually, it was me.
Okay.
So my parents, I think, so my brother's also an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like my parents thought since I'd graduated college and was like working in treatment and doing all the things that like
Mm-hmm.
alcoholic. And so like my parents knew it was getting bad, but they thought they could control it
Mm-hmm.
and like get like under wraps. And so like I lived with them for a good 8 months out of
Mm-hmm.
college. I think they saw it progressively getting worse, but
Mm-hmm.
then I moved out and my mom was worried about it. She was like, I'm worried. And I was like, I promise it won't. Like, you're right. I'm not an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and then I got enough to like where I wasn't going to work and I was locking
Mm-hmm.
myself in my townhouse. And I think my mom knew it was really bad when they couldn't find me. I was watching their dog. This was like a month before I went to treatment this last time. I was watching their dogs because they went out of town. And I locked myself up in my townhouse and didn't answer the door because I was really drunk.
Mm-hmm.
And like my parents had to cut the screen window door to get into my apartment or my townhouse at the time, and like they still couldn't find me because I was like hiding from them.
Mm-hmm.
It was like becoming a problem, so I begged to go to treatment, and my mom did the thing most people in the program do. She was like, you need to have some skin in the game, so you need to start looking too if you really want to go. And so I started
Mm-hmm.
looking and reaching these places. And then if we back up a little bit, when we lived in Germany, my dad served with a guy in Bosnia who actually runs a couple of residential treatment centers in Oklahoma City. So
Mm-hmm.
he's known me since I was like a day old.
Mm-hmm.
Called him and said, I don't know what to do with her. This is really becoming a problem and she's begging to go to treatment. Like, where do I send her? And he's the one who set it up for us. He's the one who really didn't get involved until the very end. Because like when I was in college, like I was gone. I was like 4.5 hours away from home. And
Mm-hmm.
I was home every week freshman year, but after that I only went home really for like Christmas break, spring break.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think my parents really knew how bad it was until they actually saw me at the end. So they
Because they didn't see you that much because you were off at college.
because I was in a totally.
Mm-hmm.
So I grew up in Gillette, Wyoming, and I went to the University of Wyoming,
Mm-hmm.
and they're apart. So I'd like go home and bop over and say hello when I was like still functioning, and I really wasn't like too hungover and whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think my mom had an inkling it was getting bad at the end because there was even a Thanksgiving like I didn't show up for because I was just like I couldn't even be there.
But you were able to finish college.
Yeah, I have my bachelor's minor in sociology with, and this is the funny part. So I took a lot of dictionology classes along with sociology and psych classes.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I do have
my. Went to the detox. How many treatment centers did you end up going to?
I went to one inpatient RTC.
Okay.
Time.
Inpatient is where they keep you. You
Yeah, I was there for
to actually stay there.
Mm-hmm.
How long were you there?
90 days.
Okay.
Put up. They were like, "You're here for 90 days." And they were like, "And after you discharge from here, you will be going to sober living for at least 9 months."
Okay. Did you stay in sober living for 9 months? How was that experience?
It was actually a really cool experience. So,
Mm-hmm.
I was still, when I discharged from treatment and I went to sober living, I was still pretty like hopeless and didn't know what this all was going to look
Mm-hmm.
like, because I hadn't met anyone with a similar story as me. So like when I went to treatment, the women I met, it was like really cool that they got sober, but no one had really drank like I did, so to speak, or at least that's what I thought at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I had the experience now that I had then. I could see the similarities, but at the time I just couldn't see the similarities with anyone like me, because I hadn't met anyone who had an eating disorder and had
Mm-hmm.
Until I went to Mirror House in Kerrville.
Mm-hmm.
And so Whitney Welch is the sober living owner still. To this day, it's still open. She's got like 3 houses.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, they got me hooked up with another woman who was working a 12-step program, and she sponsored me, and she had all the same struggles that I had. And
Uh-huh.
for days I would get up and just like promise to God and myself that like I'm
Mm-hmm.
today.
Mm-hmm.
Tomorrow's gonna look like, and I had no idea how to live life. Like I didn't know how to clean.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know how to self. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how to grocery. I didn't even know how to show up to work.
Yeah, I think when we addicts and alcoholics say that to people that don't know about this disease, that someone actually have to tell you how to do those things, because you actually do forget, because you're so into your disease till you don't think about anything but when you're going to get your next drink or when I'm going to get my next drug. So things like cleaning and taking care of yourself. I only did it because I didn't want to look like an addict or alcoholic. So my outsides didn't match my insides. Does that make sense? But it was all for fake.
Yep.
But I do know when people say that they actually have to be told to do, there are other things that I had to be told. Maybe it wasn't to take a bath, Lorraine, to remember to clean yourself up, stuff like that. There are other things that I had to be told that I completely forgot how to do it.
Yeah. And that was like my truth. Like when I got out of sober living, like I remember, or when I got out of treatment and went to sober living, I remember telling the house manager, I'm willing to learn, but I don't know how to do these things. Like I remember assigning me for, and I know I'm for in treatment, but like
Mm-hmm.
the way I did my chore in treatment is obviously not gonna fly here. So like
Mm-hmm.
tell me how to do this.
Yes.
I
Yes.
was fortunate enough that, I mean, Mirror House is like this, when you walk into it, this like divine feminine energy when you walk in. And so when you walk in, you walk in feeling loved already. And I think
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's what gave me just a little bit of hope.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and they just kind of like let me just exist for a while.
Yeah.
Because
It seems like it's got a big piece of your heart. Yeah.
and
I
so
can
like,
tell.
oh, sorry, I didn't expect.
That's okay.
But that house, like, and what those women did for me when I first got sober, means the absolute world to
Yeah.
me, because I just like kind of like what we were talking about prior to this. Like I just felt like there wasn't a way out, because
Mm-hmm.
figure out like what was really going on with my mental health. They couldn't get me on the right meds in the beginning. I was navigating so I went to MHMR because I didn't have health insurance when I got sober this time either. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Texas, state funded, where you can go and meet with a
Mm-hmm.
psychiatrist and get free and all that stuff. So like I was working with them, and I was really fortunate that the doctor who me, I mean, he was just a godsend. I would just like go in there sobbing, and I'm like, the anxiety just like won't go away, and the depression, a lot of other, you know, hallucinations and I'm hearing things and I don't know what to
Mhm.
do with them. Um, he just like he just was like, it's gonna be okay. Like, you're fine.
Mhm.
You work,
Mhm.
and even when you're depressed, even when you don't want to, like, you just have to find
Mhm.
just enough energy just to go. And so
Mhm.
uh, that, I let it's so funny. I had this really cool experience recently where I went to Kerrville to visit my best friend. It's so funny. I wasn't expecting her to watch it. She's on here right now.
Awesome.
I went and Friday night, so I kind of had some time just to like reconnect with some people, and I got to reconnect with my original sponsor, and she was laughing and she was like, "You were so needy." So, because I wanted it so bad,
Yeah.
and she just gave me just a little glimmer of hope, and I just like
Mhm.
clung just that little bit of something. And she
Mhm.
just like, she helped me walk through some really tough things that I never thought I was going to through.
Mhm. That's the amazing thing about this program. It's like we get to become these people that we never thought we could become. It's that's and I can understand how sentimental you are. I feel that way about my group as well. I mean, it's like those people, they saved my life, girl. You
I know.
know, I you know, I tell people when I'm in the rooms, the 12 steps room, I think we're like the people, we're the forgotten ones until someone says that, you know, you're worthy, you're worthy of being saved, and have that helping hand out. And that's what I try to do with other people,
Yeah,
to give them hope.
it's just like that. And there was another woman in my life who, she was a big part of my story in the beginning of me getting sober, and she recently went back out and
Hmm.
to and um, she looked at me and she was like, "You were one of the few lifelines I had left at
Hmm.
the end." It's just answering the phone and putting it on mute while you're doing the dishes, you
Hmm.
know,
Hmm.
just like listening. And I think I did
Yeah.
not pick up the phone and listen. I don't know if they were really listening, but they let me ramble, which is
Yeah.
why
Yes. Yes. It. I don't know whether you're familiar with Maggie's house, the
I am
place what you did. So you've gone there and been a part of meetings before.
a long time ago.
Yeah.
Yes.
What you're describing about the house, it reminds me of Maggie's. That when I go there, I can feel, you just feel it. It's like,
Yeah. So the
it's
backstory.
so moving, right?
So the backstory to the house that I got sober in, it's always been some kind of like. So I would say it's always been some kind of like social services house, because um, before it was a sober living, it was actually a clinic for young moms in
Mm-hmm.
60s, where they would go and have their child, and either
Mm-hmm.
adoption, or they'd get this mom set up to be able to live on her own with this child. So it was an orphanage.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, it became a men's sober living, and that's when my sober living owner bought it, and now it's just been Mirror House moving forward. And like you just walk in and you can just feel like on the back of the house you can still see like the emergency sign from when it was the pregnancy clinic,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
street. And like I remember like just sitting on the front porch, and like you look at your roommate and be like, "You're miserable too, cool, great, let's go smoke a cigarette now," you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was fortunate enough that I lived there for almost 2 years, and I was fortunate
Uh-huh.
enough I got to manage the house, and it's a 14-bed house, so there's 14 women in
Uh-huh.
total, and there's two houses, um, and I managed it through COVID, like the beginning of COVID.
Wow.
Um,
Mm.
it was terrifying because like me and the other house manager, which I'm still really really good friends with, I remember sitting in her bedroom just like sobbing and being like, what are we supposed to tell these women?
Mm-hmm.
No idea. And then on top of that, you know I will say Kerrville did not shut down their meetings during COVID.
Mm.
The meeting halls open because like that was the one part of COVID that made me very angry.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause I year and a half, 2 years sober when COVID happened. But they shut down the meeting. Like switching to virtual, like a couple of the meeting halls stayed open and they were like, you're more than welcome to come. And then they even set up a camera in those meetings so you could join in virtually or in person. And and so we just kept going to meetings. And we wore masks and we washed our hands and did everything we could. Like, what else were we supposed to do? You know? And then a lot of us lost our job. That was the whole thing to walk through. And I'm so thankful for that house.
Yeah.
So thankful.
Did you find it hard to transition from sober living to living on your own?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, went from I need you to tell me what to do and how to do it to and meeting women similar to me who are like, I need you to tell me what to do and how to do it. So I was doing that. Which my experience around it gave me a little bit of a power trip and maybe probably more than I really do have. Which I've none, by the way. And so, it was really tough. I was kind of hopping in and out of relationships at that point and somewhat slipping in that area of my life. That's a totally separate kind of recovery journey in its own. Myself, not nourishing myself, and I lost a ton of weight. The only is everyone tell me I look so good. I look back, I did struggle. So I lived in Kerrville. After I moved out of sober living, I lived in Kerrville for, I think, another maybe 6 months, maybe less. Because then I was a line cook at Chili's there for about 1.5 years, fun fact, which was a really humbling experience for me. I wanted to
especially
work back
with a degree, right?
Well, it's so funny. So like I tried to when I first got sober, and it was a nightmare. I had nothing to offer the patients whatsoever. So I quit, and then I move on to the next place. I started at one treatment center, and then I worked at a homeless youth shelter for a little while, and then I worked at another treatment center. I did the same thing every day. My schedule was the same. It was simple. It was, it was a good experience for me. I always tell women when they first get sober, like when I'm sponsoring them, get a simple job. Go work in fast food. Go do something simple. So that's what I did. And growing career-wise on South Padre Island at a treatment center there. So I moved from Kerrville to the island. And that's where I met my best friend, and she was so funny. She started out as my supervisor. And when you live on the island, your 12-step fellowship is your coworkers, and that's what you have. So, and did all the things and walked my dog every day. And I didn't really grow up until I lived there because I didn't know how to be by myself and be okay. Because like when I first got sober, I needed all these women, and my codependency saved me because I wanted to be near all these people, which was great. But transitioned into this part of my life where I needed to learn how to be okay by myself, me and my dog.
Is this the same dog that you have?
No. So
okay.
I had Cyrus prior. I actually put him down when I lived on the island. Oh, again. He was the dog that got sober with me, and was a part of a lot of the journey of my addiction. And so I had to put him down on the island. I have him cremated, and he's still sitting in my bedroom in his box. But no,
I have one of those too, girl. I have a dog that I got so used to what. She saw everything. She saw me at my worst, so I can feel you. Yep. I mean, she saw me looking and doing things that no human being. Do you know what I'm saying? Yes. So, yeah. Yeah. So I can relate.
He was like a huge part of every adult milestone I ever had. So like college, moving out.
Mm-hmm.
He even living with me. My sober living owner allowed Cyrus to live
Awesome.
in the house for like the
Awesome.
fair. And so, I mean, he went through it all with me. He moved down to the island with me. He just got like so sick, and so I finally just like put him down, and I'll never forget that experience, because even then, right? And this, like, Paige is such a big part of my story. Is even then, like, I'll never forget. He was like an 80-pound dog, and he's so sick. And I call her, and I'm like, okay, it's time. And she's like, okay, well, I'm headed over. And she comes over, and I'm like, I gotta get this dog in my Jeep. Like, I need help. He was like an 80-pound dog, and we wrapped him up in a blanket, and firemen carried my apartment stairs, loaded him up in my Jeep, and the whole time he was just like smiling. It was so.
Yeah.
But no, so like put him down, and then that night I stayed the night with Paige and her husband Newell for I think like 2 or 3 nights after that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I found Greta, and her birthday is a day after my sober date. So
Awesome.
that night, and then I went and picked her up probably like a month and a half after I put Cyrus down.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, he was my rock when I got sober this last rock. But I think, like, for me, because I know, like, the whole point of this is to talk about, like, the hope and everything. I think for me, anything I thought my life would be is so much better than, or it's whatever I thought it was is not near as good as what it is now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So
Yes.
I can remember, like, laying in bed in sober living or even in treatment being like, okay, one day, like, I really want to be working back in treatment. And like the end goal was to be in more of an operation role. The biggest reason for that is because I wanted to help break down the barriers that I had when I got sober this last time. So I managed the entire facility. We have 9 to 18-year-olds, and there's like 15, 20 employees there that I help manage. I know that these parents kind of trust me with their kids. I never thought. So I guess even if you feel like there's no hope, there is. If I can do it, anyone can.
Yeah. Yeah. And like I was telling you earlier, I wanted to, this episode is about relapse in recovery, to let people know that are struggling, because it's, it's hard, especially in the beginning. And I know in the beginning for me, if I only had like a week, and girl, as soon as something would happen, it would be, well, I might as well drink. I only have a couple of days anyway, without realizing, in order for me to get some days, I got to not drink. But my mind was so sick, I didn't see it that way. I just would see it. And I didn't pick up a chip. I've only picked up one chip, by the way. But I guess I knew I still was going to drink. The reason I never did pick up a chip, right? But once I did pick it up, I didn't relapse after that. But I would think, I might as well drink.
Yeah.
And I would, without realizing. Is that your experience?
Yeah, or find a reason, right? Like, I couldn't without staying sober. I remember she sat me down and, listen, everyone was trying to get me towards this 12-step program, and I just all looked at them crazy if you think I'm going to do that. So I would do every route but that. Let me put it that way. And I remember the therapist sitting down with me, and she was like, okay, I need you we're going to write a list of things down that trigger your drinking. And so things down, and I was like, okay, cool, so I'm going to avoid these things. So that means I'm going to avoid my family. Avoid my boss, my dog makes me upset. I'm going to avoid, like, no one sat me down and just said, I think as soon as I saw just like for me, it was like, and I'm not sure if I'm supposed to bring this up, but as soon as I saw like the cycle of addiction or the sick chick cycle, when that was presented to me, that's when it made sense. And then I was like, cool, try it. You need to go to a 12-step program. And I'm like, no, I'm good. I was resilient, but my resiliency was going to kill me because of the experiences that I had.
Yes.
I out I'm just as sensitive as the next alcoholic. I think that's the one thing that I had to finally accept, was that I'm a sensitive person. I like to cry a lot, but I love to cry. That's my release. I'm feeling stressed, mad, happy, sad, but no, it'd be like 3 days sober, and a boyfriend would say something I didn't like, and I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, he was like, your drinking's getting out of control. And I was like, but you smoke pot every night, so what's the difference? And it didn't make sense, so I just kept drinking the way that I was, because like our whole relationship, for me, my experience around that relationship, I don't know what his was partying, right? And so then it would be, oh, I'll never forget this. This is a good one. It was right before Halloween, and my roommate and I were like, okay, we're going to do No Drink November. So, or we were like a week before, it was a week before Halloween, and my roommate and one of my best friends in college comes to me and they say, I think you're an alcoholic. And I was like, maybe I am. So I just don't drink as much. I'm like, okay, that sounds like a plan. So my roommate was like, I'll even not drink with you. And I'm like, great, like, let's try this out. And then she like, after that, we'll just not drink. And so I remember that. And then I got so drunk and took a lot of Ambien and thought, and my roommate, I'll never forget, I like knocked over, like, you know, those Sensi's, like the wax pot things, I, like, knocked balls. And I remember her waking up like super mad at me, and I was like, I remember just,
what did I do? What's wrong with you?
I didn't even know what I did wrong until she was like, you need to go look in the living room. And I go in there and I'm like, who did that? And she's like, this is a problem. And I'm like, okay, well, we're making a pact right now that we will not drink. Well, she was with me. She was until she wasn't. So it was up until Thanksgiving, and then she was getting ready to go to Germany to see her boyfriend. My last class was Tuesday afternoon. So I took her to the airport, came back. Since she wasn't in the apartment, I drank, went to class that afternoon, and that was my sociology class. And my sociology professor is the one who taught almost all of my minor classes for that. And so, well, because a lot of his like more specialized classes like race and ethnicity, sociology of gender, all those classes were much smaller than like sociology 1000. So I got to know him really well. And so I go to class, and I will never forget. He like pulled me aside and he's like, are you drunk right now? And I was, well, I only had like 2 beers before class. And he was like, forget. He looked at me and he's like, I think this is a problem. And I think this is what we really need to think about over Thanksgiving. He was like, I saw you signed up for my class next semester. So, because it was like the end of the first semester. And he was like, I really would like to see you get it together. But I practiced so much, I would show up no matter how hungover. And so, like, I really thought about it, and I'm like, I don't really think it's a problem, because he normalized the binge drinking. Everyone around me was normalizing this thing, so what I thought was normal drinking, not the case, right? I also had this, so then I like think about it, and I'm like, okay, I get drunk that night again, I get high. I was like any kind of downer I could put in my system, I was there. I'm like the 15% of, I'll never forget when I learned this fact. I'm the 15% of the world that gets hyper when they take downers or wake up.
Yeah. That's a big problem.
So I am drunk that night. And then I go home for Thanksgiving, and like my mom and dad are drinking, my siblings are drinking, family drinking, and like everyone kept telling me you need to not drink, but it felt like I was being set up for failure because everyone around me was drinking.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so not that that's even an excuse to drink. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that.
Mm-hmm.
And so like go to Thanksgiving, get drunk again, and I'm like, come back, pick up my roommate from the airport, and she goes, how did it go? And I'm like, wait. She was like, okay. And then the semester ended, and she ended the lease on her side of things, and I moved into a place by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I would get like a week under my belt with the intentions of, I don't know what my intention.
A week without drinking, and as soon as that week was over with, girl, I would get tore up. I mean, I would make up for that week that I didn't drink, and it would be a hot mess, so I might as well drink all through because I'm gonna make up for it. And once I start, I can't stop.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
Yeah, the only thing that would stop me is either like a roommate would kick me out, or like something the most dramatic thing would have to happen for me to stop. Like it had to be institution or like towards the end, it just got to a point where I just didn't care because I had no hope. And then I would try for a day, and then the intention would be a week. The intention would be 2 days. 24 hours, and I couldn't do that.
Yeah.
Because then I would like get these roommates because I needed more money for the drugs and the alcohol.
Yeah.
Money because I wasn't paying my rent at the end. My electricity got so towards the end, like I was drinking a handle of Crown a day. If that explains any kind of alcoholic guy. So Crown is very expensive.
Yeah.
So spending rent money to be able to keep up with the drinking. And towards the end, drinking to stay well enough to go to work. I was drinking enough because I lost my case management job, obviously. And I started working. My dad owns grocery stores back home. And so I started working back in the grocery store again. And like, this is embarrassing to admit. And I know my dad knows this happened. But I go hide in the bathroom and drink and take a nap and then wake up. Yeah. But, yeah, I'll never forget, like, when I went to treatment this last time, I was so desperate because I was so hopeless. I am thankful for the hopelessness I had this last time, which I'll never forget. When I left for treatment, my mom looked at me and she's like, just don't waste my money.
Yeah.
I love
it. Yeah.
But don't waste it. And but I'll never forget how just hopeless I was. Like, I got on the flight. Lorraine, my intention on my way to treatment, I was flying to Texas by myself. So I had to go from Wyoming to Denver and then the DFW. Okay. So Gillette Airport has 3 gates. That's it. So, and I've flown into Denver a ton, but when I flew into DFW, I was just like, what world did I come to? Say that. But I was planning on staying sober throughout this whole trip. And I get to the security, and the intention before I left was that, well, I bought a bunch of shooters, like a day before I left. My backpack in a grocery sack, and I pulls it out and just looks at me. And of course, like, Gillette's so small. I went to high school with him. I looked at him. I said, I'm going to treatment. I'm going to rehab. So, and back in the bag, get on the flight, and I remember my mom seeing the TSA guy like pull the bag up, and her just like I felt so bad that I then snuck into the bathroom once I was in the little area to go take a drink to be able to get then I get to Denver, drank my ass off because my plan was only just to drink enough to get me through the flight. Almost flight. So got on that flight, flew into DFW. I had to Uber to the detox center because the detox is not connected to the treatment center.
Mm-mm.
The intention was to stay sober, and I couldn't do it until
Girl, I've gotten drunk in the bathroom at the airport and I blacked out. So
wow.
my husband is calling me. They're trying to find me, right? So we missed the plane. I come out of the bathroom and I'm going, he's mad. And I'm looking, what's up?
How much time has passed? Remember?
Yeah, I was like, what's up? What's all the commotion about? He was like, everybody's been looking for you. Security's been looking for you. And I was like, oh well.
So,
But yeah, blacked out in the bathroom.
yeah, but it's like, right, like, I think like throughout my whole time, like relapsing and then trying to get a day or two put back together, relapsing, and then like all these huge consequences were coming, whether it been my electric shut
Mhm.
off or I didn't have a place to pick or like whatever. And like I did the things I had to when I was homeless to survive.
Mhm.
I think like at the end of the day, like no one explained to me, you have a disease,
Yeah.
and it's gonna be okay. These are the things you need to
Mhm.
do. Until I got here, right?
Yes. Yes.
And then I thought I was only going to live in Texas for a year and I was going to go back to
Mhm.
Wyoming for 5 years. So God had different plans for me, which I'm so if you are hopeless, just cling on to that and you'll get desperate enough that you want to do the things. That was
Yeah.
my,
Yeah.
honestly, the
Yeah.
amount of desperation
Mhm.
and hurt and real emotional pain that I felt.
Mhm. Well, Casey, thank you so much for being on Silver Lining. Great story, girl, and some good memories too. Yeah, I love hearing about the house. I mean, wow.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I love that. I love when there's good sober living homes like that. That's what we need.
Kirk was honestly Kirk was my life.
Awesome. Well, girl, we're going to wrap it up. And guys, I hope you have enjoyed Casey's story as much as I have. And once again, make sure you share, subscribe, and like on Silver Lining Nation. And remember, we love you guys. Take care, and we talk to you guys soon. Bye, guys. Bye, Casey.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye-bye.